For most of the 20th century, nuclear energy looked like the future of America. Clean electricity, massive power output, tiny amounts of fuel powering entire cities. A single nuclear plant could generate enormous amounts of electricity without burning coal, oil, or gas. And for a while, the United States didn't just believe in nuclear power, it led the world in it. Reactors were planned across the country. Utilities ordered them by the dozens. Engineers imagined a future where electricity would become so abundant and reliable that nuclear power would completely reshape modern life. But then, America stopped building. Not completely, but almost. And the strange part is this: America never stopped using nuclear power. Even today, nuclear plants still provide a huge portion of America's carbon-free electricity, and the United States remains the world's largest producer of nuclear energy. So the question isn't really why America abandoned nuclear energy. It didn't. The real question is much more interesting. Why did America stop building it? To understand that, we have to go back to the beginning. In the 1950s and 60s, nuclear power carried an almost mythological promise. After World War II, atomic energy was no longer just associated with destruction. It was being transformed into something else, a symbol of progress, a symbol of modern civilization, atoms for peace. At the time, America's electricity demand was exploding. Factories were growing, suburbs were spreading, air conditioning was becoming common, and the country needed enormous amounts of power. Coal plants needed endless trains of fuel. Oil depended on unstable global markets. But nuclear reactors? They could run for months using only a tiny amount of uranium. To many people, it felt almost magical. And most importantly, it felt inevitable. Utilities rushed into nuclear construction. Dozens of reactors were ordered across the country. Politicians supported it. Engineers celebrated it. For a while, nuclear energy looked unstoppable. It felt like the beginning of a completely new energy era. But beneath all the optimism, there was a problem hiding in plain sight. Nuclear power was unlike anything America had ever tried building before. A coal plant was complicated. A dam was massive. But a nuclear reactor was something entirely different. It combined civil engineering, high-pressure cooling systems, radiation shielding, emergency response planning, advanced manufacturing, national security concerns, and public trust into one machine. And because of that, every mistake mattered, not just financially, psychologically, politically, because when people imagine a coal plant failing, they imagine pollution. When people imagine a nuclear plant failing, they imagine catastrophe. That fear would eventually change everything. The first major turning point came during the 1970s. America's nuclear boom collided with economic reality. Inflation surged, construction costs exploded, electricity demand slowed, interest rates climbed, and nuclear projects, which already took years to complete, started becoming financial nightmares. A reactor that looked affordable at the beginning could become brutally expensive once delays started happening. And delays were everywhere. Design revisions, regulatory changes, safety upgrades, legal battles, local opposition, supply chain issues, management failures. Every delay added more cost, and every cost increase made the next project feel riskier. Then came 1979, 3 Mile Island, a partial meltdown at a nuclear plant in Pennsylvania. The accident did not become the apocalyptic disaster many feared. But psychologically, it changed America forever. For millions of people, nuclear energy stopped feeling futuristic. It started feeling dangerous. Suddenly, the debate wasn't just about electricity anymore. It became about trust. Could nuclear companies be trusted? Could regulators be trusted? Could engineers really control something this powerful forever? For much of the public, the answer became no. And after 3 Mile Island, regulations became significantly stricter. Now, to be clear, strict regulation was not the problem itself. Nuclear reactors absolutely should be heavily regulated. The real problem was unpredictability. Because once projects became unpredictable, investors stopped feeling safe funding them. If nobody knows how long a reactor will take to approve, how many redesigns it might need, or how much money delays could add, then nobody really knows the final cost. And if investors can't predict the cost, they become reluctant to build. That became one of the biggest reasons America stopped constructing reactors. Not because nuclear power stopped working, but because nuclear construction stopped making financial sense. Then, in 1986, another disaster hit the industry: Chernobyl. Unlike 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl became one of the worst nuclear accidents in human history. A reactor explosion, radiation spreading across Europe, entire cities abandoned, images of disaster broadcast across the world. Technically, the Soviet reactor at Chernobyl was completely different from American designs, but public perception didn't care about engineering details. Chernobyl permanently linked nuclear energy with fear in the minds of millions of people. And by the late 1980s and 1990s, America's nuclear expansion had effectively frozen. Existing reactors kept operating, many performed extremely well, but new construction became extremely rare. The industry entered a strange phase. Nuclear power remained important, but building more of it became politically and financially toxic. And then another problem arrived: natural gas. In the 2000s, fracking transformed the American energy market. Suddenly, natural gas became incredibly cheap and abundant. Gas plants were faster to build, cheaper up front, easier to finance, and far less controversial. A utility company could build a gas plant relatively quickly. A nuclear reactor could take over a decade. From a business perspective, gas became the obvious choice, and in electricity markets, the easier option often wins. So nuclear lost momentum again, not because it failed technologically, but because it couldn't compete economically. And over time, America lost something even more dangerous than public support. It lost experience. The country stopped building reactors for so long that the industrial knowledge itself started disappearing. Specialized workers retired, manufacturing supply chains weakened, construction teams lost practice, companies stopped developing expertise. America slowly lost the rhythm of nuclear construction. This created a hidden problem most people never think about. Nuclear power depends heavily on repetition. The first reactor is expensive, the second should become cheaper, the third should become smoother. Eventually, construction becomes efficient because workers, engineers, and suppliers continuously improve the process. Countries like South Korea and China understood this. They standardized reactor designs. They maintained active construction pipelines. They preserved industrial knowledge. They kept skilled workers constantly building. And because of that, they became dramatically more efficient at constructing reactors. America did the opposite. It paused for decades. And when you stop building something that complicated for that long, restarting becomes incredibly difficult. That reality became painfully obvious during America's attempt to restart nuclear construction. Plant Vogtle in Georgia was supposed to symbolize a nuclear comeback. The project used advanced AP-1000 reactor designs developed by Westinghouse. The goal was simple: prove that America could still build modern nuclear reactors. Technically, the reactors eventually succeeded, but financially, the project became infamous. Years of delays, massive budget overruns, construction chaos. The final cost reportedly approached tens of billions of dollars, and the project revealed something uncomfortable. America had not forgotten how to operate nuclear plants. It had forgotten how to build them efficiently, and that may be the single biggest reason America stopped building reactors. Because a nuclear reactor is not just a machine, it's an entire ecosystem. You need highly trained welders, specialized concrete workers, nuclear-grade manufacturing, experienced engineers, reliable supply chains, political coordination, public trust, long-term financing, and if even one part of that ecosystem breaks down, projects become dramatically harder. But despite all of this, the story may not be over, because the world is changing again. Electricity demand is beginning to surge. Artificial intelligence data centers require enormous amounts of energy. Electric vehicles are spreading rapidly. Governments are pushing toward decarbonization. And modern electrical grids are becoming harder to stabilize. Solar and wind are growing quickly, but they remain intermittent. The sun doesn't always shine. The wind doesn't always blow. Nuclear offers something different: reliable baseload power, day and night, rain or shine. And because of that, governments and major tech companies are starting to reconsider nuclear energy once again, not as a relic of the Cold War, but as a possible foundation for the future. That's why advanced reactors and small modular reactors are now receiving enormous attention. The dream is no longer just building bigger reactors, it's building reactors differently, standardized, simplified, repeatable, because America's nuclear problem was never purely scientific. The reactors themselves worked. The real problem was construction, economics, complexity, time. Nuclear energy once promised electricity too cheap to meter, but in America, it eventually became too expensive and too difficult to build. And that is the real tragedy of America's nuclear story. The technology survived, the power plants survived, but the construction system around them collapsed. So America didn't stop building nuclear reactors because nuclear energy failed. It stopped because nuclear construction failed. And if the country wants a true nuclear comeback, it has to solve the exact same problem that destroyed the first nuclear boom. Not splitting the atom, not generating electricity, but building reactors efficiently, on time, on budget, again and again. Because the next nuclear age won't be one inside the reactor core. It will be one on the construction site. And maybe, after decades of hesitation, America is finally preparing to try again. See you in the next video.